Malcolm Hoenlein is with us, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. We call this the weekly update. Mr. Hoenlein, welcome back to JM and the AM.
Well, great to be with you as always.
Appreciate it.
Beautiful Friday in New York. Finally.
Yeah. This is what we're calling beautiful. That's how desperate we are. We're calling this beautiful. You were sitting in Yerushalayim with 82-degree weather on an Erev Shabbos, and and here for the United States, for the New York area, this is considered beautiful. All right. You know what's on everyone's mind, Malcolm. I mean, this is not a surprise. You know what's on everyone's mind, and that is the imminent, what seems to be imminent, although you could tell me if that should be debunked or not, that it's imminent, attack on Iran, whether it's Israel first attacking, the United States first attacking. I don't remember this type of buildup in the last 12-day war, unless we just didn't pay as much attention to the buildup, and it didn't take as many weeks to get the equipment and military personnel and the machinery, etc., everything they need to start a war. Maybe it didn't take as long to actually execute that buildup. But am I right or wrong? Is there an imminent attack coming from either the U.S., Israel, or both?
Maybe. So, first of all, it is the question on everybody's mind, and I understand it, and it's the question on my mind. And anybody who tells you they know what's going to happen, other than the president, is not telling the truth. Wow. He has advisors around him who are advocating for, and those who are advocating against, and those who will say, let the negotiations run out. As you know, they met yesterday. There was no real progress, at least as reported, but they did schedule another meeting for next week. I don't think that's a necessary impediment to action. I think everybody is sick and tired of including the Europeans and others, about the obfuscations and the fact that the Iranians are not yielding on any of the key points. And I believe that they have new information. I saw it on the face of the senators who came out of the briefing, and from other things that I've heard from people close to the situation, that perhaps about chemical or biological warheads, or about the advances on the nuclear program. Everybody knows that you can't trust anything that they say, and negotiations don't mean anything, and that's why they changed that. There would be no sunset clause this time, that everything would be open-ended. There would be no deadline for the deal. But and it may be that they needed more time. You know, the USS Ford, the largest aircraft carrier in the world, pulled up near Israel yesterday, had been in Crete for a little while. Many planes have landed, in fact, in Israel. They're at the Ubda Air Force Base, including Raptors, which are stealth fighters, and aerial refueling planes. I think that the buildup is the biggest that we've seen, certainly since 2003, and I'm told that there's even much more firepower now in the region than there was even in 2003 during the height of the Iraqi war. There are a lot of considerations. You know, there are countries that are supposedly friends, like Saudi Arabia and others, that have barred our overflights of their countries. Jordan has seen a big buildup of U.S. Air Force and other capacities. We have a tremendous amount in the region. Right. Whether this will be U.S.-led or Israel-led, as you indicated, is a big question. There are those who say the president wants it to be U.S.-led. Then the last 48 hours, they've been pressing about it being Israel-led. There used to be indicators you could look at when aircraft carriers were moving, and we used to report, and I would say, watch this one or that one, and you'll know what's going to happen. That is not the case this time. Right.
You know, last week and even the week before, you were telling, I mean, I don't know if I can call it Trump's MO, but it's sort of becoming that, you know, he brings them to the negotiating table, and as he continues, and I didn't even realize there's negotiations next week. I'm curious, do you know when that is? You know what date has been set aside for that?
I think it's next Thursday.
So
they can't negotiate on Purim.
And if they've made that public, and I'm being serious now, then we know this is postponed. Action is postponed for at least a week.
Not necessarily. This next round of negotiations on this one, yes, the one that was held this week,
right?
But the fact that the Iranians were not forthcoming, I don't think that necessarily is an impediment anymore.
And it could. I mean, I call it Trump's MO, but it seems to be his strategy. I will continue to threaten you. And hope that as you see this buildup happening around you, the firepower getting to the region, coming towards you, you'll cave in. And I think it's possible the president just doesn't realize that they don't have that red line, and they don't, and it's not going to make them cave in. So that's the first piece I want to ask you about. And the second thing is, didn't he sort of give them an out this week as he and Rubio are talking about, they just don't want the production of a nuclear bomb. Like that's what we don't want. And if you would just say, he said it outright, the president. I don't think he's ever even, said this before, that if you just tell us there's no, potential to build a nuclear bomb, then, we can come to an agreement and decide not to attack. Am I right that he's sort of given them an out, that strategy's never been used before?
No, that it has been on the table all along. I think the question of giving him an out is a very good one, and the president, believes in negotiations. It's the art of the deal, which he prides himself on, and that's why you never know when he's feigning and when this is a real policy. We don't know whether they're waiting to have certain capacity in the region. There are a lot of analysts who have told me that we can't stay there more than a month. We don't have the backup there, and that we would exhaust the resources. And you can't keep that kind of a mobilization where so much of our collective power of the United States is located there. The fact you have 3 aircraft carrier groups. I think the president didn't just say, give us the word. He said that it has to be a pledge. I want to hear those words. We will never make a nuclear weapon, which was more absolute than that. But look, there are divisions in the administration. We know it. There are people who don't want to see an attack. There are people who do. I think there are people who are still negotiating because they want to be able to say that they did it or believe that that's better. It is not, because the negotiations are not going to yield what is essential, and that is removal of the nuclear capacity and a commitment that it will not renew, even if they give the word now. In 6 months, they're digging inside the mountains. Their production facilities on the nuclear program is being replicated and rebuilt. The most and equally important for us is the ballistic missile capacity, and the talk of as I said, warheads that may be non-conventional is very scary when it comes to them, because we know that they use it. Look what they did to their own people. And the president acknowledges 32,000 dead. We believe the number is much higher, and the terrible things they're doing even to the families. They're making them sign that they didn't die at the hands of the IRGC and that thing, and they're making them pay to redeem the bodies at exorbitant amounts when people have nothing. Remember, their economy is in total ruins. The currency is worth nothing. How people survive on it is way beyond me. And I talk to people in Iran. I talk to dissidents and to them on a very, very frequent basis, as well as I do to the Kurds and the Druze, and you have to hear from their perspective of what they see.
Student protests are still going on this week, right?
There are definitely. They have been going on courageously every day, and they know they're being filmed. They know that the possible consequences of this, that their families could pay a price for it. The problem that the dissidents don't seem to have the ability to really unite, and there's no single individual. Reza Pahlavi posits himself as it, but I don't think that they've come together. That there's somebody, and I think the concern is what happens the day after, and there are people in the administration, I think including the president maybe, who are concerned because they're not being given a clear plan. You don't want chaos. You don't want the IRGC to be able to step in with somebody maybe worse, or to take advantage of the vacuum that will be created. There was a meeting in London this week of the dissidents, and many of them came together there. I can't say that I think it's at the mature to the point where they really could assert themselves, but with the inclusion of Pahlavi and others, I think that you could get an interim body that could at least hold until elections can be held, but at least stabilize the situation. Everybody's shopping for the leader to be able to take over, and even resurrecting some of the old people, those who are under house arrest or others, to see that there could be a orderly change once you have it. So there are a lot of considerations that are going into what we do. But anybody who understands the circumstances, and we see the shift, when we lose credit, look what's happening with Saudi Arabia. It is moving in absolutely the wrong direction. And this is very disturbing because it's a major development, and it hardly gets any attention. Now, when people, including people we are close to who would otherwise be very keen observers, don't understand, there's been a charm offensive by the Saudis, including directed at the Jewish community here and at others. They're trying to say that all the reports were their conflict with the UAE, which is very real. The changes inside the country, the anti-Semitic stuff in some of their media. These are all serious changes that are taking place. And Saudi, winking and nodding now to Qatar, which has been an eternal enemy, and some people say even they've gotten financial assistance. A lot of their programs have not worked out the way they should. And Saudi Arabia is a very important country.
Yeah.
But even more important is the visit of Modi this week.
Yeah, we're going to get to that. On the other topic, just for a second, in terms of what people are expecting, the ambassador Huckabee did recommend his staff to leave, right? I mean, he's encouraging Americans to leave, or at least American personnel in Israel. Correct? Non-essential
personnel, right. Which is pretty standard procedure, but he's not leaving, and I think that's the important statement.
And is there? I'm sorry.
And then look at all the American personnel that are now in Israel.
Right. And is there anybody in Washington who's sitting next to the president and whispering in his ear that any intervention in Iran is going to be bad for the midterms? I think that's a legitimate point of view. Do you think anybody's telling him that?
100%.
For sure. And
I believe there are people who are saying that, who are opposed to war, who feel that the American people are not ready for it. I believe on this one, the American people would be more ready than they think.
So if I were to tell you that 70% of this country, of the voting population of this country, would prefer we don't go into Iran, you'd believe that, or you'd say it's way too high?
I think it's too high, but I don't think it's impossible, because the media has been distorting and not telling the truth about what the threat that Iran... I mean, there's no sympathy for Iran. But the fact that 90% of the people in Iran would like to see the intervention, so you don't have domestic opposition like you have in other places. But you're right, the American people generally are shy of any war and don't understand the stake, why it's so high. And I think if the quicker we do it, the better it is. Just get it over with. If it's successful, it will be down to their benefit. He showed all the patience in the world, which is one of the things I think he's trying to show, that he let the clock run out and did everything possible to avoid having to take military action. It may be a limited action, right, which is what others are advocating. Just to hopefully that would topple the leader.
Right. Understood. Boy, the not knowing is getting, people are getting very, very, and by the way, and I don't know what your plans are, as the big holiday approaches, people wonder about travel from Israel, because you remember last time there was 0 airlines. I don't remember how many days it was that even El Al was out. But, there were days when no airlines were traveling in and out of Israel. So, with the big holiday coming up, I would imagine there's a lot of attention out there.
You're talking about Pesach.
Yeah.
For me, the big holiday right now is Purim that we have to get past and see whether
but come on,
people are able to fly.
But in our tradition, we call that a minor holiday, don't we?
No, I meant I'm talking about in terms of the airlines, not in terms of the matzah.
Yeah.
But the insecurity, and people, call me with rightly ask questions about whether their children should come home from schools or stuff, and they're coming home soon anyway.
Right.
But I personally hold that if a child wants to come back, they should absolutely bring him back. They shouldn't be afraid and whatever. But I don't think the parents should send a signal that when Am Yisrael is under a siege, we run.
I got it.
They face it, we face it.
Yeah, I got it. I hear you. Someone said to me, someone who's planning on coming to the U.S., I'll see you soon, war permitting. That's the new caveat, war permitting. It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored digital radio around the world, the web at NachumSegal.com and the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, on the beloved NSN app. Just a reminder, everybody, we're at 482 donors. We put out the challenge to get to 500. I am in total disbelief that we're actually in striking distance of getting to 500 donors to our campaign by the end of this show, which would be amazing. And I thank everybody who's donated. Malcolm, we've gotten donations, you can imagine, from anywhere and everywhere, now that we're heard everywhere. This morning we got Hollywood, Florida, we got Montreal, we got Jerusalem, of course. But Malcolm, I must share this one with you, which just came in as we were speaking, because you will love this one. You will love you who are always telling us to look at a map will love this one. Dear Nachum, thank you so much for all that you do for those of us who listen to your station, especially Friday. You may not realize how much your voice and your work means to us here on a small maritime island off the coast of France. It brings warmth, connection, and a sense of belonging. Wishing you and your family a good Shabbos and a joyful Purim. With warm wishes, the Kushner family, Jersey Channel Islands. Now you, Malcolm, I bet know where that is. I, as we were speaking, had to Google it, and it's right next to Normandy.
It's exactly where it is, and it's famous from World War II, and it's not New Jersey. So
right.
People should understand it's not. This is Old Jersey.
Right.
It's Old Jersey. That is fascinating.
Is that something?
I wonder if they're related to the ambassador.
Oh, that's right. Good point. Unbelievable. Anyway, that's a 10 times high donation. Thank you to everybody, and please give at fjbunity.org. All right, Malcolm, you brought up Modi. I promise, and obviously we have to speak about him. I was a little surprised, by the way, that the American media didn't pay more attention to Modi visiting Israel. Maybe it was not as big a deal. I mean, obviously the Israeli media paid a lot of attention to it, and I don't know if we consider it in the big picture a big deal or not. Does this change anything now that he has demonstrated to this degree the relationship that he values with Israel? Does it change the landscape of the Middle East?
It certainly impacts it. Remember that Israel and India together are 1.5 billion people.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's like saying the Aaron brothers hit like 800 home runs. Hank Aaron hit 790 and his brother hit 8. Like that.
That's what was meant to say. So I was just hoping to see if people awake on Friday morning to get it. But look, Modi's visit is very critical because for Israel to have the close relationship with what is now, I think, the largest country in the world. Certainly, they're surpassing China. Whether it's happened, it's close if it hasn't happened, but will happen. The economy is critical. The linkage, and there's all these IMEC programs and which I won't go into, but linking India to the Middle East, to Europe, on energy, on security, the markets that India represents for Israeli products, not just military, but in high tech, and how much interchange there is between that people don't know. When you see the Saudi Arabia flirting with Pakistan to do a coalition with Turkey, which I do not believe will happen, but
Pakistan's busy now, right?
Pakistan is right now. Supposedly they were bombing the Taliban, but we don't. It hasn't been confirmed. The bombings have been confirmed, just not saying who did it.
Right.
But I believe that, by the way, that there are possibilities for Israel with Pakistan, and seeing Modi there may encourage them to do more to facilitate at least backdoor channels. There have been Pakistani businessmen who have visited Israel. There are top people there with whom I've been in touch, and others, but that's for another discussion. The fact is that if you look at the military exchanges and what Israel and India, what Israel provides India and what India is now potentially providing Israel, it's enormous, and it could be the next stage of a revised Abraham Accord, which is, I've been pushing for 10 years to reach out into this area, not to depend on Saudi Arabia. And I think events have justified what I've told you all along about why it's a mistake to put the pressure on Saudi Arabia. That backfires. The more you talk about them, the more they raise the price, and their internal difficulties. And I think that MBS is facing real serious internal challenges. The movement, as I said, towards Qatar and towards others is very disturbing, though they deny that is the reality. Anyway, the visit was a great success of Modi's remarks, ending with Am Yisrael Chai speaking to the Knesset.
And some agreement on the Indian foreign workers. I didn't realize Israel was so desperate for foreign workers in the tens of thousands.
They need foreign workers for agriculture and for building and other purposes. And as you know, because they don't since October 7th, the Palestinians, certainly nobody from Gaza, it used to be 15,000 people a day coming from Gaza, including those who carried out the massacre on October 7th. So that's not happening, and you need to replace it.
What was it? What was the Indian, referring to the country of India, what was their attitude during the war? Did they support Israel? Did they stay completely out of it? 5-10 years ago, was there also this close relationship between the two countries?
No, it wasn't as close. Modi has certainly raised it. I've met with him, and I can tell you it's so sincere. It's so obvious what his feelings are, and so the relationship was for a while was not even good.
During the war, did he support Israel, or he stayed neutral?
No, they were supportive. But you remember, India is the second largest Muslim country in the world. Yes, second largest Muslim country. I think they have 250 million Muslims in India. They have a lot of everything, but it's a Hindu country, and there's a lot of tension with the Muslim population because of the relationship with Pakistan. There's tensions there. But I think that this goes far beyond it. I think it's a really sincere affinity on the part of Modi and many people in India. The polls show it. They identify with Israel's struggle. You remember, they both became independent, I think, the same time, the same year, at least. And so there are natural ties. And I speak to Israeli businessmen who go there, and I've been invited. I've never yet made it there because you need a lot of time to visit India. It's a big country, but know that this has been going on for a long time. The relationship just deepens, and I pray for Modi's health and sustainability. But I think that the people support it as well.
Wow, very interesting. I'll tell you, this was a real eye-opener. And why do you think the American media didn't pay much attention to this meeting? Or am I making too big a deal of that?
Not at all. If he had said Israel's guilty of genocide, I guarantee you it would have been a big story, a headline story, and you see the stories that do become headlines, and the lack of accountability about. I think there is a legitimate debate whether we should be taking and giving Tucker Carlson all the platforming, but frankly, seeing him sitting in the White House does upset a lot of people, as seeing Mamdani there yesterday too. But those things, which are minor in some of those stories compared to a visit by Modi, compared to the buildup, even doesn't get people don't understand what this situation is in the region and what's really at stake. If Iran can walk away from this whole, if the Ayatollah remains in power, the people of Iran, number one, will pay the price. The tens of thousands that were killed, of young people that were killed during the demonstrations, this time as in the past, there will never be any credibility for the West. You remember when they say, the president gave them assurances, which they take very seriously. Yeah. And you know that I talk to people in the region a lot. And
they say, don't betray us, and every time we betray them.
Right, but they have a lot of confidence in President Trump. They really believe that he will do it, and that he's the hope. And frankly, Israel is the hope. You see them demonstrating still with flags. That more and more the Kurds and the Druze and the other minorities say they want to be part of Israel. They want to have a relationship with Israel, right. And many will admit that they're only alive because of Israel.
Yeah, understood. What do you think?
But the UN doesn't care about that. Right?
Yeah, well, obviously not. What do you think of? Did you think it was ill-advised that Ambassador Huckabee spoke about Israel and how he had no problem if they actually ruled over the land between all the way between Egypt and Iraq?
So, first of all, you have to know Ambassador Huckabee to understand that he was not making a political statement. He was simply saying, look, God promised this land and not just the sliver that they occupy today, that Israel has today, but a much broader region. So, if they were in the broader area, he was saying it as a sign, but and if you look at it in a biblical context with which he views these things, it was perfectly understandable. Then, of course, the reaction and how they exploited it, so many Arab countries and the U.S. had to go and apologize. They should have said to him, just look at the Bible. That's all he was making a reference to. And it is Huckabee's reference. He spoke last week to our mission there, the conference presidents and others, and he's just amazing. And Mrs. Huckabee as well spoke to a group of 100 or 150 women who were there for the wives of Yahya Khalid people and others, and they were blown away to see the sincerity, the meaning, what he says, what he means what he says, and he doesn't hold back on it because it's his framework. Yeah. So people shouldn't react to it. I don't know why they don't react more to Tucker Carlson's outrageous and horrific, hateful comments and statements.
Why you don't believe we all need a DNA test to prove we're really Jewish?
Yeah, right. I think they need a DNA test on him to find out if he's human and where he belongs in the specter of things. But he certainly is on the hateful displays are just horrific. People shouldn't dismiss it because there are too many people who take seriously what he says. And
I
then
get
he
that,
in the Oval Office.
But even at my age, I did not realize that the "Are they really Jewish" thing is one of the oldest anti-Semitic things. I never realized that.
Of course,
I
they
never
say
knew
we're
that.
Khazars. We're not the originals. There were black nationalists who were saying all along that the Jews were blacks and that we're interlopers. This is a very old canard. And saying that we were European, that the Jews are Europeans who came in and conquered and have nothing to do with the Jews who lived there then.
Right. How many people have told you that the name Haman is in Khomeini? How many people have pointed that out to you?
Yes, and also the fact that you had the leaders of Somaliland and Modi there, so it's Hodu at Kush.
Right.
So that's
Somaliland continues to make commitments to Israel and the U.S., right? They continue
and reverse in U.S., I hope will recognize Somaliland. Somebody, again, as I've told you before, they should look at the map and see how significant Somaliland is, and they want to do business with Israel. The leader came to Israel. The foreign minister visited Somaliland, the Israeli foreign minister. So while it's not a major development into some, but if you look at how strategic it is, the location, and Israel's the first country to recognize it, hopefully others will now follow suit. It is a significant development. When Israel has limited choices there, you see Somali is very hostile to Israel, and of course doesn't recognize Somaliland. But remembering how close it is to the Houthis, you understand its importance.
You've been around a while, Malcolm. Isn't it unbelievable when Purim rolls around how many times episodes like this have been occurring that literally mirror the Purim story or in some way, have some reference to a piece of the Purim story?
It is 100%, and that we're told that if you read the Megillah only as a historic document and don't understand its contemporary significance, then you really haven't fulfilled the mitzvah. And if anybody really reads it and you understand all the messages, how contemporary they are, how relevant it is, and there are books that were written on the Chazonis, and I think Rabbi Stolper, others have written books which talk about the current relevance of what's in the Megillah, that people will find it fascinating to understand look at the messages on anti-Semitism, how the same themes repeat themselves from those days to this day. So what Haman's message was about this Fuzar Mefarad, what a danger, and why. What did he say they did wrong? Nothing. They don't ever say they did anything wrong. Like Paro, like others. I mean, it repeats itself in every generation. So, yes, you're absolutely right.
And one other thing I got to bring up on this topic, and I'm hey, it's almost Purim, so this is the time to talk about it. But the usage, we're reading Parsha Zachar tomorrow, and we know it's a biblical obligation, and we know why it's a biblical obligation, right? We must annihilate Amalek. And the use of that requirement, the use of that mitzvah in the Torah by certain people who are not fond of the Jewish community is so exaggerated. This is how they try to justify their opinion that Israel actually is, committing genocide, because the Bible says that if there's somebody that's an enemy of the Jews, they must be eradicated, they must be annihilated. And they use this as an analysis of why Israel, in their opinion, is, trying to eliminate every single enemy around. When we say if they would never attack us, we could live in peace, they just don't believe that. And they use the whole Amalek thing, and I'm sure you've seen this, they use the whole Amalek thing to justify the fact that they're accusing Israel of genocide.
First of all, it's not a humanitarian drive that motivates them. They don't care about all the people who are dying. The women in Iran, the students, they prove it over and over again that there's no real humanitarian motivation that's driving the critics of Israel, the genociders, the people who have marched and demonstrate and get violent, and because they know that, we know that they're trying to undermine America, they're trying to undermine Western values, and that the easiest target are the Jews in Israel, and that the references to biblical message. But when we understand why was it necessary, what was it that about Amalek that separated them and made them, because they went after the weakest, and the kind of attacks that they engaged in, that people understand. There's no satisfying them. And if we realize that you can't accommodate to the haters, that you got to really stand up to it and isolate them. The question of whether we keep mentioning their names or we should keep focusing on them is a legitimate issue that has to be analyzed and debated.
Well, with social media these days, we failed that test, frankly.
No, but maybe it's time for us to stop responding to them, that every time we respond, we only give them a bigger platform. And, giving Tucker Carlson the ability, he didn't even leave the airport. He just went into the lounge. Then he accuses them of harassing him until the film comes out and shows him hugging the guys who came to take his passport. He sat in the Fatah lounge. He never left there. He wasn't isolated. He wasn't detained. It was all a lie. And yet he gets away with saying it and continuing to mouth all of these things to millions and millions of people, and they have huge reach. So it's the difference in those days. The whole world maybe knew, but they didn't have a media which to spread the message.
Yeah, understood. All right, we got to finish up our fundraiser. Malcolm, thank you so much. Everybody out there, fjbunity.org, fjbunity.org. Mr. Hoenlein, have a wonderful Shabbos, and of course a very happy Purim.
Happy Purim, but remember, Zachar, remember, that we learned the lessons of the past, that we understand the importance for today and most of all for the future. This is a time when, and number one, we need Achdus, we need Jews to stand together. We have enemies of all kinds doing films about our communities, trying to isolate them and mobilizing the anti-Semites with millions and millions of hits this week on just one video that is out there that is so horrific, it's almost unbelievable. And that the reason for Zachor is to remember. For us, remembrance is about the future, is never more important.
Amen. Happy Purim, and thank you so much for joining us. There he is, Malcolm Hoenlein. Weekly update, everybody. If you're a fan of the weekly update, if your week is not complete unless you've heard Friday morning's update with me and Malcolm discussing the issues of the day, please support what we do here. Go to fjbunity.org. Again, we did not cancel this segment. We promised that we would keep all of our segments today, even on the final day of our fundraiser. Now all we're asking is you join the roster of donors. fjbunity.org. Again, that's fjbunity.org, fjbunity.org. We had put across the challenge not only to get to our goal today, and we're going to try to get as close as we can, but we put together the challenge of 500 donors. Can we get to 500 donors? And look where we're at. I cannot believe we're at 483 donors. We're at 483 donors. Give and give now. Rabbi Yudin coming up. Plenty more happening right here. You're listening to JM in the AM.